In the Zohar Kodesh tells us that Shabbos is Mikayr de Kula. That Shabbos is the source of all good things. Shabbos is the source of all good things. All brachas, all shafa, everything flows from Shabbos. Amongst the many good things that the Rebbeinu Shalom can bless a person with is refuah, is to be healthy and well, to be cured from all sickness. And if Shabbos is Mikayr de Kula, if Shabbos is the source of all blessing, and one of the many blessings that we hope for is refuah, that means that Shabbos has to contain within it a quality of healing. Shabbos is a source of all bracha, and one of the brachas that we want to have is refuah. So Shabbos is a source of refuah. So what we have to think about for the next few minutes is what aspect of Shabbos in particular is the source of refuah. What aspect of Shabbos is a source of refuah? So how do we figure that out? So there's a principle in life which is that anything the Jewish people say or do should not be taken lightly. Should not be taken lightly. Things that are halacha certainly shouldn't be taken lightly. Things that are custom also should not be taken lightly. But even things that the Jewish people just say, even things that are, you can't call them custom even, they're cultural phenomenons. Things that are part of the Jewish culture is also something not to be taken lightly. Tzricha limud, it needs to be investigated, it needs to be studied. So there is something in the Jewish culture, and it might sound silly initially, but like I said, if it's something the Jewish people say, and it's part of our vernacular, it's part of our culture, you have to investigate. There is something in the world that's called, by us, and even by Havdalah, the non-Jewish world, Jewish penicillin. What's Jewish penicillin? Chicken soup, right? Person's not feeling well, what does the Alta Baba say? So the Bubby says, have some chicken soup, you feel better. If this is something the Jewish people say, that chicken soup has a quality of refuah, now we know that chicken soup, fundamentally is connected to Shabbos. It's one of the basic foods that is custom, that's the custom to eat on Shabbos. You have challah, you have gefilte fish, and you have chicken soup. So if the Jewish people, if there's this, part of our culture, part of just the vernacular the Jewish people use, is that chicken soup has healing qualities. That's what all the bubbies and alta bubbies say. And we know chicken soup is rooted in Shabbos, that's one of the foods of Shabbos, then we just pinpointed the aspect of Shabbos that's the source of refuah. Again, as I said, Shabbos is the source of all blessing, of all bracha, and included in that is refuah. So what aspect of Shabbos is specifically the source of refuah? So it must be an aspect of Shabbos that's being activated and that's being opened up through chicken soup. So chicken soup on Shabbos is sort of a reflection of a certain aspect of what Shabbos is, and that's the channel of refuah. Ad kedei kach, so much so that even during the week, the Jewish people have this language. Even during the week, by eating chicken soup, you'll have a refuah. Because chicken soup, even during the week, is connecting you back to that particular aspect of Shabbos, which is refuah, which is a source of refuah. So we have to now investigate for the next few minutes, what aspect of Shabbos is being expressed through this inyan of chicken soup. And if we could identify what aspect of Shabbos is being expressed through chicken soup, and we know that's the source of refuah, we'll be able to identify how Shabbos brings a refuah to all things, to all sickness. So what's the inyan of chicken soup? What's the inyan of soup? So let me explain. There are two needs of the neshama. There are two needs of every Jewish soul. There's one need of every Jewish neshama, which is to cling to God. To cling to God, to be attached to God. There's a side of the neshama that wants nothing more than to escape this world and to just run back to heaven. This is a desire, this is a tchukas hanefesh, this is a longing of the soul. The soul wants to return desperately to where it comes from. And the soul is not from this place. The soul wants to go back to heaven. That's what it wants. This is a deep, deep desire of the neshama. But yet, as Chazal say, Bal karchach ata noilad, bal karchach ata chai, which means that whether you like it or not, against your will you were born. Against your will you were born, against your will you live. So on the one hand, there is the part of the soul that wants to get back to God. And God, where is God? God's in heaven. So it wants to return to that place above. But there's another part of the soul that feels very much that compulsion to exist in the world and to be part of the world. Because that's ultimately, we're here to accomplish things. So there's a part of us that wants to escape, wants to cling to God. And to cling to God means to escape from this world. But there's another part of the soul that feels compelled to fulfill its mission in terms of making this world a better place. Even though by being part of the world, we're a little bit, less heavenly. But that's the sacrifice the soul feels compelled to make. So you have these two sides of who we are. Whenever a person, now, that's number one. Number two, whenever a person is hungry or thirsty. So we have to understand that whenever a person is hungry or thirsty, that's not only something that's being experienced by the body. So when a person is hungry, so we understand why they're hungry. Their body is saying that they need some food. But everything that your body says, your neshama is saying at the same time. And so we have to understand for a second what is happening in the soul when a person's hungry. And the same thing, conversely, what is happening in the soul when a person's thirsty? What's happening in the body when you're thirsty? We know the body needs water. But what is the soul saying when it's thirsty? So here's the difference. When a person eats, eating is something that ties you to this world very, very much. For example, when a person eats, they bend their head down to the food, right? That's the normal way. So in other words, eating is something that is very physical, and it connects a person to the physical world in a very, very strong way. When a person's hungry, the body is saying it needs food. What the soul is saying is that it wants to be connected more to the world. That's what the soul is saying. See that? Remember that part of the soul that wants to, that feels compelled to be part of the world in order to accomplish things? That is what's being awakened when a person's hungry. And food, when a person eats, you're satisfying that part of your soul. That part of the soul that says it wants to be part of the world, that's what hunger is. That's what eating is about. Conversely, what is thirst? What is thirst? What is thirst? When a person drinks, you tilt your head back, right? You tilt your head upwards. When a person is thirsty, tzamalocha nafshi, the root of thirst in the body is because you need water. But the soul, when you're thirsty, what the soul is thirsty for is that it wants to return to God. It wants to go upwards. It wants to go upwards. So again, like I said, there's two parts to the soul. There's a part of the soul that wants to be part of the world, and there's a part of the soul that desperately wants to be detached from the world, wants to go back to heaven. When you're eating, lowering your head means that you are connecting yourself more to the world. Drinking, which means lifting your head up, means that you're satisfying the other part of the soul. You're detaching yourself from the world. This is, by the way, also why we find the minig by many people is that when they're wearing tefillin, you have to, the Rambam says, for example, the end of Hilchas Tefillin, that when a person is wearing tefillin, you are becoming a tzaddik. You're becoming a person that's more in tune with spirituality, with the higher world. And therefore, because of that, you'll find the custom by people is when they're wearing tefillin, they're not going to eat. You don't eat food when you're wearing tefillin. But drinking, they will. They'll drink a cup of tea, a cup of coffee with tefillin on. Why? Because food binds you to the world. That's not tefillindik. That's not tefillindik. But drinking, adrabah, drinking means that you're tilting your head up. It means that you're going up. You're connecting yourself to a higher place. That is proper with tefillin. That is okay with tefillin. So eating means satisfying the part of the neshama that wants to be part of the world. And drinking means satisfying the part of the neshama that wants to ascend to heaven, that wants to go high. Now, where does sickness come from? Where does sickness come from? Sickness is, the Gemara says, sickness, chayli, is a 60th of death. It means that what is death? Death means the neshama is completely detached from the body. Sickness means the neshama is not completely detached from the body, but it separated itself from the body to an unhealthy degree. Where does that come from? That comes from that desire of the soul to ascend to heaven, to cling to God. Sometimes that thirst is so strong and so potent and so unbelievably intoxicating that the soul literally begins to leave the body because of that intense desire to connect to God. And when the soul begins to leave the body to a strong degree, that's what causes sickness. So whenever you have a Jewish person that's sick, on whatever level, it could be a cold, to God forbid, worse things. But the body is sick for body reasons. But on the soul level, the reason why the person's sick is because the soul is yearning to ascend to heaven and to find God to such a strong degree, ad kedei kach, to such a degree that it's beginning to actually leave the body. That's what the source of sickness is. So what's the remedy? The remedy is soup. What is soup? Soup is a liquid, which is like a drink, but you eat it like a food, right? So usually when you tilt your head down, it's because you're eating solids. And by drinking, you tilt your head up. But soup is unique, is that it's a liquid, but you tilt your head down to eat it. What does chicken soup mean? Soup means that you're telling that part of your neshama that's so enraptured with God that it wants to literally escape this world to return to God. You're telling that part of the soul, I know what you want. You want God. You want the likus. You want divinity. But let me tell you a big secret. And the chicken soup reveals this secret, which is that the God that you're looking for is as much down here as he is up there. And so you no longer have to tilt your head up to satisfy that thirst. You could tilt your head down to satisfy that thirst. And the secret of soup is that the same yearning, to satisfy that yearning that your soul is craving to ascend to heaven. Why does it want to go to heaven? Because it wants to find God. Where do you think God is? God's in heaven, but God's also on earth. The same mitzvahs and the same accomplishments that you'll do in this world, that itself is also where God lives. There's a medrash that says this, in fact. The medrash says that sometimes when the soul is so enraptured with godliness that it wants to die, it wants to escape the body. So the medrash says, you know what the Rebbeinu Shalom does? The Rebbeinu Shalom reveals how molei kol haaretz kavaydai. It reveals how Hashem's presence is in this world as much as it is in heaven. And the soul is satisfied. The secret of soup, and the reason why soup brings a healing to sickness, is because what's the root of all sickness? The root of all sickness is a Jewish soul yearning to ascend to heaven because it wants to find God, and that thirst is so strong, that desire is so strong, that it's literally leaving the body. That's the source of sickness. So what's the refuah? What's the cure? The cure is we tell the soul that the same God you're looking for that's in heaven, he's found on planet Earth. You don't have to go anywhere. You could still be in the body to find God. And so what was until now drinking, which is to tilt your head up, now you have soup and you're drinking, but you tilt your head down. Because that God that you're looking for up there can be found down here. And this is exactly what Shabbos is. A major element of Shabbos is that everything we do on Shabbos is a mitzvah. Everything we do on Shabbos is holy. Eating on Shabbos is holy. Drinking on Shabbos is holy. Sleeping on Shabbos is holy. The secret of Shabbos is that there's no divide between heaven and earth. That's the great secret of Shabbos, is that the same God that exists in heaven, that you might think that you could only find if you go to heaven, the secret of Shabbos is that God exists down here. And if you want to satisfy that thirst and that desire of the soul to find God, you don't have to go anywhere else. You go with your family, at home, partaking of this world, being in the world. This is exactly where God is. God created the heavens and the earth. And that's what we celebrate on Shabbos. The same God that created the heavens is the same God that created the earth. The same heavens that carry the Rebbeinu Shalom's imprint, the earth carries his imprint too. That's what we celebrate on Shabbos. So the whole inning of Shabbos is a cure to all sickness. Because the root of all sickness is this mistaken notion of the soul that in order to find God, you have to go up there. And only down here, we have to be down here, but this is not where God is. And the refuah to that, and that causes sickness, right? Because that causes the soul sometimes wants to find God to such a strong degree, ad kedei kach, that it begins to leave the body. And that's the root of sickness. The refuah, which is Shabbos, is what? Is to tell the soul, the same God you're looking for is taka found down here. Therefore, chicken soup, which is a drink that you eat like a salad, which is associated with Shabbos, that's Jewish penicillin. That's Jewish penicillin. Because chicken soup reminds the soul, it reminds each and every one of us, that the same God you're looking for that's up there, he's found equally down here. Equally down here. And that's the secret of Shabbos. So part of the avodah and part of the hachanas that we make for Shabbos is to be able to begin to wrap our head around this truth that God is everywhere. God is everywhere. You don't have to go anywhere specifically to find him. God is not only in heaven, and he's not exclusively only in holy places. The Rebbeinu Shalom is molei kol haaretz kavaydai. And by doing that, then you satisfy that thirst and that need of the neshama, even by being involved in being part of the physical world. And that's the whole thing of Shabbos, is chicken soup. So Hashem should help us. We should be zeicha to experience that. And the light of Shabbos should bring a refuah to all things. Be mechazik all yidden, that molei kavaydai, einan milvadai. And from that we should be able to experience all the menuchas hanefesh and all the yeshuv das that comes to the light of Shabbos.